Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Jeremiah 29:11. Like I said, I'm going to have to talk fast. You're going to have to listen fast so we can move on through this. I'm going to try my best to stick to what notes I jotted down and try not to go on any rabbit trails or anything. But I believe it's an important word. When God tells Jeremiah, I know the thoughts that I think toward you. God could tell you that same thing. He could tell me that same thing. I know the thoughts I think towards you. And he says they are thoughts of peace, not of evil. And he says this, to give you an expected end. What God was in essence saying was to help you fulfill your destiny. Now listen, all of us, I don't care who we are, where we come from, all of us have destiny assigned to us. The problem is that most folks on this planet never realize and fulfill their destiny. Some of you heard me say this before, I'll just reiterate it very quickly. The greatest potential on the planet, you know where the greatest untapped and unused potential is on the planet? On the planet? On where? Somebody got ahead of me because you know I was going that direction, didn't you? Your local cemetery is the greatest untapped potential that there is on the planet. There's so many people who are born, they live and they die, and they never realize the potential that God had called them to, the potential that God had placed in them, or the destiny that God had called them to. Now the sad part about that is this. Many of them are sitting in church pews across this nation right now, and who are professing even Christianity, but don't have a clue as to why they're here. They don't know, don't understand that God has called them to destiny. There's corporate destiny. I won't go into all that. There's individual destiny. I will say this. You will never realize individual destiny apart from corporate destiny. I'll tell you that now. You will never realize what your personal destiny is outside of the corporate destiny of the church. Amen. So, with that said, let me move on. God graciously promised to bring these scattered Jews in exile. They were in exile in Babylon. He promised to bring them back to their homeland after about 70 years. And his plans for his people, listen, God's plans for his people are always pregnant with grace. God's plans for his people are always pregnant with grace. God moves and operates in grace day in and day out, 24/7. Now, I want to go to Psalm chapter 139. There's a few verses I want to move through there if I can, since we're talking about destiny and we're talking about baby dedication and all these things. Let me say this. This child today, Elijah Scott Parnell, yeah, he knew I was talking to him. He will never remember this day. He won't remember this day. That's right. Last time he was here, he's my amen corner. But he will never remember this day. You're not disputing my word now, are you? He will never remember this day. This day is not just to pray over him and dedicate him to the Lord, but this day is to speak to us as parents, as grandparents, as church people. It's to speak to us of our obligation, our responsibility. And anyway, let me move on. I want to interject that before I forgot. Let me move on. Psalm 139, I want to begin reading verse 13. For thou hast possessed my reins. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knows right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Then thine eyes, did see my substance. Yet being unperfect or imperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned when as yet was none of them. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. Each person is a creative work of God. Every individual, no two people on the planet are alike. None. Isn't it amazing how creative that God really is? Isn't it amazing that there's no two people on the planet have the same fingerprint? No. And unless you're twins, you don't have the same DNA. I know a lot of times twins have same DNA, or at least very close. But God has made us individuals. We are created works of God. So the physical processes in the mother's womb and in the process of birth don't really fully explain the formation of a new person. God is involved in each instance, performing a new wonder, and the purposes for the people he creates, and which is everybody, everyone. There's not a person here who hasn't been created by God. I know they're experimenting with things in the lab and all this kind of stuff, but so far only God can spark life. And so the Hebrew word in this verse 13 for possessed means to acquire, to set up, or to erect. In the context of the passage, it means to fashion or to grow together in the womb. The Hebrews believed that, he says in verse 13, he says, for you have possessed, we already said that word possessed means to set up. God set up, or he begins to acquire, to establish, to erect. You have possessed, or you set up my reins. Now the Hebrews, they thought that the reins were the first part of the human fetus to be formed. So here it probably refers to the foundation of being in this context.